Okay team, what we want to do in this lesson is create some final adjustments to make everything blend nicely together and kind of really make our images merge and look like one seamless image. So let's jump straight back into Photoshop, and where we left off we have the woman shadows. Just going to close that group and we're just going to come up to the top and we're going to create a new group called Final Adjustments. Now if you're not already, do get into the habit of performing these final adjustments. It's going to make a massive difference to the overall output and the final look of your image. This is where you choose a lot of options, how warm you want the image to be. For example, you can selectively adjust the colors, as we're going to do lots of different effects. So the first thing we're going to do is actually edit the woman. What we're going to do is add a subtle blur to the woman. Now the reason we're going to do that is because the woman is much sharper than this background. So what we actually want to do is kind of create a better blend. Now this is going to happen when you copy images from one image and place them in another image, because they may be in focus in the image you're taking them from, but the image you're putting them into, they may be in a position where they need to be slightly blurred. So the detail on the woman is kind of too much when compared to the rest of the image. So let's come in, and what we're going to do is come into the woman layer, and we're just going to duplicate this layer, Command or Control and J. Then we're just going to right click and we're going to rasterize the layer. Now what we can do now is we can come and add a blur. So I'm going to come to filter, I'm going to come to blur and Gaussian blur, and we're just going to bring this in so we can see the blurred effect. Now what we're going to do is actually hide this effect and brush in where we want it. So we can create it quite extreme if we want, like so. Obviously there's parts of this image that are way too blurred, like the face, etc., which is why we're going to hide and brush in what we want. So I'm going to click OK there, and again this is in the layer mask. I'm going to hold down Alt and click, so it only applies to the woman layer, same as all these layers. So we're in this stack. Now we've got our layer mask here, which I'm actually going to fill with black. So just hold down Alt and backspace on the keyboard to fill with black. And there we go, we've now hidden that effect. So with the brush, I'm just going to zoom out slightly. With the brush selected, and we want to have white this time because we want to reveal on the layer mask. And I only want this to be subtle, so I'm going to reduce this down to 20. I'd rather build this effect up slowly. Let's have a look. So where do we want? Inside here, this needs to be a little bit more blurry and out of focus. The underside, like the edges of the image. So if we just brush in here, let's turn this off and back on. It's actually super subtle. So what I'm going to do is actually take this up to 40. So we've got 4 there. Let's change that to 40 and 40 for the flow. And this time I'm just going to brush in and be able to see this effect a lot better. So brush in here over the woman's arm, like jumper, to take some of the detail out. Now we can do this up here as well on this part of the jumper. Someone like the skin, let's do it on the skin down here, on the legs, down there. Now we've also got the socks. Let's take some of the detail out of the socks there, and again on this part of the sock, maybe some of the shoe, the bow on the shoes. So this is, let's go up here to this main part we've affected. So this is before and this is after. So before and after. So I'm just going to do a little bit more maybe on the hair around the outside there, and let's have a look. Let's just zoom out and let's just move down slightly, turn this off. So this is before and this is after. So before and after. I'm just going to draw a little bit more onto the jumper here, just so we can kind of take a lot of that detail out. Okay, perfect. That is actually looking much better. And again, you need to perform this for every single image that you place into your composition. Now the next thing I'm going to do is a selective color, and this is going to go at the top in our final adjustments layer. So I'm just going to close the woman group, and now what we're going to do is adjust all the colors together. So this is now going to help combine all the colors, because we're going to create unity by creating a selective color over all of the layers. So let's come up to the reds, and this time you do want to pay close attention to all the colors. So as we move these across, you're going to see like changes. For example, if I go all the way to the left, you can see it's quite harsh. So I'm going to increase that there. And this is where you can kind of choose how you want your image to be. You can kind of really define and make some big changes if you want. So do play around with each slider and see how this is going to affect your image. For example, there, that's more of purpley tones. It's much more reddy warm tones into yellows. So you don't want to undo all the hard work that we've done either. So make sure that you kind of build up this effect nicely. And remember the goal in mind, which is to combine an image with multiple light sources. So this is now yellow tones. Brighten that up. So I quite like it there. It's kind of creating a brighter effect. So you can come in and play. I like to kind of, the brighter those light sources, kind of more combine this image feels for me. So I'm going to play around. Again, the greens. You can see the greens more affected down here in this area. So I'm just going to move that across. I don't really want much greens in there. I prefer this sort of creamy tones. So let's brighten that up there. Some more yellows in there. Again, nice and bright. Now into the blues. So this time the blues are going to be heavily affected. They haven't really before because we've only been adjusting them, but this car is blue, or this is all blue up here. So this is going to have a much bigger effect. So we can really see how we want to create this effect. So let's go back to 0, over to the right, over to the left. I actually prefer it probably a little bit warmer over to the left. Now magentas, so again, quite a harsh effect there. Let's just warm up there. And the yellows. It's kind of more of a vintagey look over on the right there with the yellows. And then let's brighten this up with the blacks. Now the same for the blues. I'm just going to reduce those. Oh, sorry, in the cyan, let's go up. Down, slight up again in the magentas. Again, have a play with each slider, adjusting to your preference. So now in the magentas, bring that there, brighten this light out here on the left. Again, prefer that. It gives a nice reddy hue, nice reddy tones. In the blacks, that brightens this light up nicely. Now whites, this is going to start having a big effect. So if we go all the way over to the left, look how much warmer that is. All the way to the right, and that's super blue. That's bad. We don't want that. So let's come to the middle, and I'm just going to go over to the left slightly. Now over to the left slightly on the magentas. Over to the left slightly on the yellows as well. And on the blacks as well, over to the left slightly. Now in the neutrals, let's come in and play. Let's warm it up, so we've got -2. Let's go, what do we want there? Let's go roughly 2. And then yellows, +1. Blacks, let's darken that slightly. I quite like that there. Now, in the actual blacks, so the colours within the blacks, quite like this warmed up slightly. Yellows, too washed out. Let's reduce that down. The yellow tones, let's reduce them down. Sorry, the magentas that was. Now in the yellows, I quite like that, adding some blues. In the magentas we add some kind of blues. Sorry, if we adjust the yellows, we can add some sort of bluey tones into the blacks. Now for the black itself, I'm just going to reduce that down. This kind of creates more kind of contrast, if you like. So let's have a look before and after. So this is before. And this is after. Now look how much better that looks already, because we've created unity in the colors. So again, that is before and that is after. Much better. Now the next thing we actually want to do, I'm just going to look at the saturation. So I'm just going to add a hue and saturation adjustment layer. I'm just going to come in and play with the saturation and see how I feel. Now I actually think a little bit extra saturation would be good here. So let's just turn that off and back on so we can see. We don't want it too harsh. Let's go to 0. That's where we were. And just a touch of extra color. So let's go to 15. Okay, let's turn that off and back on. Looking good. Now, also what I'm going to do is, I feel like this top area of the background image is in focus too much. Now we want the emphasis to be on the actual woman. So I'm actually just going to come in and I'm going to have a look at how we're doing. Let's just undo that, sorry. I'm just going to come in and see how it looks when part of the image is cropped. So if we just come down there, I quite like the sort of aspect ratio where it's higher, but I feel like there's too much image at the top. We don't need all this at the top. It's taking our attention away from the actual main event, which is the woman. So let's bring that down, and we want this option ticked, unticked, sorry. We don't want to delete cropped pixels. We just want to actually hide the images. So now if we went back into crop, we can expand this back out. Okay, so we want to make sure that option is unchecked. So let's go back to where we want roughly. Let's come below this line and just hit return. There we go. So now I think that's looking much better. But what I want to do, I just want to actually kind of add a blur, maybe to kind of blur to the background to bring more focus to the woman. So I'm just going to duplicate the background layer. Click on the layer, then Command or Control J to duplicate. And then I'm just going to come to filter, and we're going to come to blur. We don't want blur, sorry, we want blur gallery, and we want to come to tilt shift. Now we're going to bring up this sort of area. You can see we have all these lines. So what you can do here, you can rotate, you can play around with the tilt shift. So I'm actually just going to drag this down here, and I'm going to drag this up here. And where do we want these lines? Let's say we want it to have less of effect, but you can see there's a subtle blur on this side. So we're just updating here, and in the background here, we want to actually bring this down as well. So I'm just going to click and drag on this line and bring this right down. We don't really want the foreground color to be, don't really want this foreground to be blurred. We just kind of want to create this effect up on the top here. So let's wait for this to update and see where we're at. Okay, so let's drag this down. Let's see how we're looking there. It's looking much better. Kind of much more subtle with like a blur up here. Subtle blur starting to happen here, which kind of creates emphasis on this middle area. So we can reduce this blur down if we want over on the left, but for now I'm just going to keep it as it is, and I'm going to click OK to apply that to our image. So this is before, this is after. So you can see we've kind of blurred the top. Start to be a subtle blur in the foreground here, which is going to create emphasis on the woman. Now the final thing that I want to do is to darken the outside of this image and kind of bring emphasis again onto the central part of this image, the focus, which is the woman. So what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to come up to our final adjustments, and I'm going to add a levels adjustment. Now what we want to do is darken the image. So let's go like this, create quite a dark sort of look, and I'm just going to go like that, and then I'm just going to fill with black in the layer mask, and I'm going to grab the brush, and we've got 40 and 40, and I'm going to select white as the foreground color. I'm just going to brush in around the edges just to darken around the edge and bring emphasis to the actual woman. Now I'm just going to do it as around the whole image for now, and then I'm going to remove it over the light sources. Okay, so let's reduce the brush down, and let's come in and actually go a bit harsher now. Now I'm just going to hit X on my keyboard to select black as a foreground color, and I'm going to brush over all of the light sources. You don't want to darken the light sources at all, so let's just click on those. Okay, so let's go before and after. As you can see, we darken this foreground area. I'm actually going to reduce that effect here as well around the woman, slightly there and slightly there. Let's see, so that is before, that is after. So let's look at all these adjustments we have done. So we've blurred the woman slightly. There we go, lovely. Now we have added a selective color, bring all the colors together, increase the saturation very slightly, and then we've darkened the outside to create sort of emphasis on the central area, which is the woman. So there we go, that's our final image, ladies and gentlemen. We've kind of combined this woman dancer with this car image where there's multiple light sources that need to be adjusted. It's looking great, it's a great final result. The techniques used in this course are great. You can apply the same techniques to other compositions that you're creating. So I hope you've learned something new, learned some new techniques, and I shall see you in future courses where we will learn more cool things in Photoshop. Thanks again for joining me. I shall see you soon.